Idaho's elections and the integrity of them was a focal point, a major focal point of the 2022 campaign season. A whole lot of hand-wringing despite little to no evidence we needed to be concerned. Yet heading into the 2023 legislative session, there was expectation we would be seeing a bevy of ballot-related bills. And we are. A pair of them were brought forth today. One of those having to do with private money being used to pay for state and local elections. So, Chief Political Reporter Joe Paris, is this something Idaho has to worry about?
Well, Brian, I want to be very clear. The answer to your question is no. And I heard some chatter about this today and wanted to explain the proposed law and why it's being talked about by lawmakers. House Bill 11 very simply prohibits the state of Idaho from using private monies to administer an election. And previously, lawmakers did a prohibition on that it only applied to local governments. Now, you may be asking at home, is this something that's been done in the past? Does the state of Idaho get offers or get private money to run elections? The answer is no, but there is one single instance where private money was used recently. And Secretary of State Phil McGrain, who spoke on behalf of the bill in committee today, he explains the controversy that they're working to avoid. One you may recall.
All of what House Bill 11 stems from is during the 2020 election, where we were in the thick of the pandemic, absentee balloting was off the charts. There was some private grant money that was used to help pay for PPE, help pay for some additional pay for poll workers and other things that was used across the country. That raised a lot of questions about the funding of elections and whatnot. It's very simple. Elections really are, at their core, a government function. And simple, House Bill 11 says that it should be paid for by the government, whether that's by the local government, by the state, or the federal government, that our elections should be just solely contained within government functions. And so this bill was just a simple cleanup bill to make sure that that happens.
So, to be clear, Mr. McGrain says that he thinks private money has no business in elections, so you won't be seeing the Idaho election season sponsored by Coca-Cola. McGrain says this is something that can break trust in the very system itself.
Absolutely. One of the biggest challenges we have right now is building confidence and trust in our elections. And if there's any notion that somebody has undue influence somehow in the process, that is a real concern. And so what this bill does, it just closes one spot in the law to say, you know, we shouldn't have an election sponsored by Coca-Cola or some other brand or anything else. Not that we ever would, and not that it has happened. It's just one of those peace of mind to give people confidence in the process.
So House Bill 11 passed to the full House, and there's a great chance it'll end up on the governor's desk in the coming weeks. So before you get confused on that one, that's all House Bill 11 is all about. Now, another piece of election legislation being talked about today in the same committee, a little more controversial and drawing some great discussion. House Bill 58 aims to remove March and August elections for school bond levies and instead consolidate those into May and November election cycles. So two different camps on this one. Some believe that the March and August school elections are obscure and not publicized well, so if you don't have a kid in school, you may not know what's going on, that they're having a vote on bonds and levies that could increase taxes. They also come with the cost of running more elections. Now, others argue that getting rid of March and August elections will result in important bonds and levies getting lost on the ballot during busy political cycles, and that those levies and bonds, they're crucial to just keeping schools running well. Both sides spoke out in public testimony, but first, let's hear from Jeff Dillon, superintendent of the Wilder School District.
We believe in the Wilder School District that, number one, we get lost in the narrative of the ballot in November. We believe this situation leads us to have a very visible and transparent opportunity to meet and be visible with our community. So we could be the only item on the ballot. So we have the ability to communicate specifically the needs that we have for our special education students and the career technical needs that we have in our community.
The point that maybe hasn't been conveyed enough here today is the money savings that cutting out those extra elections has. In Boundary County last year, if my numbers are correct, we spent somewhere in the neighborhood of $30,000 extra running extra elections for bonds and levies. I'm not necessarily opposed to paying my fair share for a levy or a bond, but I feel like voters aren't adequately represented in those off elections.
So all this brings me to a point that was brought up during the race for Secretary of State this past fall. You remember it. In that race, we saw comments and messages from you at home asking if candidates for Secretary of State would implement a voter guide system for Idaho. Voters for years have been asking that the Secretary of State's office publish a guide about issues and candidates like many other states around us already do. Well, to debate on school elections and the cycle, Secretary McGrain has this note for you.
One of my goals as Secretary of State is actually to provide more information to voters. One of the ideas I'll be proposing later this session is a voter guide to get information out about both, hey, an election is coming up, and here's what you're going to be voting on. So if you want to do your research, here's information you can use to find out about the candidates, to find out about the issues. And that was one of the key things I heard in today's debate was a combination of turnout, but also information and education. There was a few citizens who testified and said, we need to make voters informed about what's coming up. And hopefully as Secretary, I can help participate in that.
So we will wait and watch on that idea, but it seemed to be very popular when I spoke with voters last fall. But back to the bill at hand, House Bill 58. Brian, that passed out of committee on a party lines vote and now heads to the full House. Election-related items will likely be popping up a lot in the next few weeks.
And the burden was shifted to local municipalities, by the way, because of this a few years ago by the legislature. So now they have to bear the brunt of that with these local levies and bonds going forward. So that's kind of the situation we're in. All right, thanks, Joe.